Hey guys, my name is Jacob Jang. I am going to replace the brakes on my 2020 Commencal Meta HT AM today. I currently have XT M8020 brakes on it, which is Shimano's last generation brakes. I will be replacing it with SLX M7120 brakes, which is the newest generation of SLX brakes. You're probably wondering why I'm downgrading from XT to SLX. I've been using XT M8120 brakes on my Canyon Neuron for a while now. I really liked how the new generation of Shimano brakes felt. I'm a big fan of Shimano brakes and I could feel the difference between M8120 and M8020. It could possibly be the additional contact point that the new generation brakes have. I probably could have gotten the XT brakes, but there aren't actually that many differences between XT M8120 brakes and SLX M7120 brakes. The color is different. XT has dimples on the lever blades and the free stroke adjuster that I don't think anyone actually uses. SLX brakes are 30 grams heavier, but they are actually $70 cheaper. Using the SLX brake will also give me an opportunity to test the difference between XT and SLX if there was any. Before we begin, there are two things we need to plan ahead: cockpit and internal routing. I currently have the XT M8000 shifter on the bike. This is iSpec 2. The new XT and SLX brakes are using the new standard called iSpec EV, so they're not compatible at all. Luckily, I have a spare XT shifter that clamps to the handlebar, so I will have to replace the shifter as well. For the dropper lever, I am using P&W's loam lever. P&W has an adapter for iSpec EV, so I bought that ahead to use it with my lever. Meta HT AM frames have the internal routing, so we will have to do some extra work in order to get the rear brake installed. That includes bleeding the brake. With Shimano brakes though, we don't need to do the full bleed, so it makes it a little easier. Now let's talk about what tools we need to do the work. Hex wrenches, 8mm wrench to remove the brake hose from the lever, torque wrench, brake hose tool, Shimano brake funnel and mineral oil for bleeding the brake, a hook or a pick, and a wire cutter. We have everything we need, so let's get it started. First, we're going to remove both wheels. I'm not exactly sure what these are called, but I like to put them on in case I accidentally squeeze the brake lever. The front brake is super easy to replace because it doesn't require the internal routing, so I'm just gonna do the rear brake first. Like I mentioned earlier, we will have to replace the shifter. To remove the shifter, we need to cut the cable off from the derailleur. Shift cables are really tough to cut. This is exactly why you want to invest in a wire cutter. Now that shift cable is removed from the derailleur, we will remove the brake lever from the handlebar. In order to open the Shimano brake lever clamp, you need to push into this small hole here. We don't want to lose this screw, so I'm just gonna screw it back in. Now we can just pull out the shifter and the cable. I use the heat shrink to keep my cables clean and neat. I need to cut this off so I can remove the brake. It looks super clean when you have it installed, but it is really hard to remove. Next step is to remove the lever from the brake hose. Use the 8mm wrench to loosen the bolt. There is going to be some mineral oils leaking, so make sure to have something you can wipe it with. Once the bolt is loose, pull the hose away from the lever to separate the lever and the hose. We need to cut off the tip of the hose to remove the barb, so we can remove the bolt and the cover. We need them gone so we can pull the brake hose through the frame. Once they're removed, I recommend putting them back into the brake lever so you don't lose it. Take off the internal routing seal and pull out the hose. Remove mounting screws for the brake. While holding the seal down, carefully pull out the brake hose. I will explain why it's important to hold the seal later. The old brake is completely gone now, so it's time to install the new brake. To internally route it through the frame, we need to do what we just did. Loosen the bolt, pull out the hose, cut the barb off, remove the bolt and the cover. Keep them safe. I'm repositioning my bike to get the damping foam fall down toward the front of the frame. I'll explain what it is when I get it out. Since we just pulled out the brake, I think it's just stuck here, and I'm trying to get it out. I think it's stuck there pretty good, so I'm just gonna push the new brake through to push the foam out. When you push the hose through, it's important to put the rubber seal first for this specific frame. When you push the hose without the seal, the frame actually scratches the brake hose. You can see that even though I pushed it only a little, I already have scratches on the hose. This is why we had to hold the seal down earlier. The seal protects the hose from getting any scratches. Keep pushing the brake hose through the frame as much as you can. Rotating it or twisting it helps getting it through all the way. Using a hook, try to get the damping foam out. So this is the damping foam or anti-vibration foam. This foam is installed within the frame to prevent the rattling noise from the brake hose and the shift cable housing. We will be installing this back in. I'm going to use the hook to get the brake hose out. This hook isn't a bike specific tool or anything fancy. You can find it easily at any hardware stores. Now that the brake hose went through the frame, we can push the hose all the way in. Then we can mount the brake. We're not going to tighten it just yet. We're going to adjust it later. We still want the foam to help prevent the noise, so install it back in. We want the foam to fall in, so I'm just repositioning the bike back. Push the foam all the way in. Shake the hose so the foam will drop in place. Push the brake hose through the seal. Then install the seal back. When you buy a new brake, the brake hose is usually longer than you really need. I think it's too long, so I'm gonna cut it. Measure where you want to cut, then actually cut it. I'm going to use the heat shrink tube again so I can keep my cables clean. It's time to install the barb. These two things, an olive and a barb, should be included in the box with your brake. If you can't find them, you can get them on Amazon, but make sure you are getting BH90. There is one for BH59, and that is not what you want if you are installing SLX or XT brakes. There are a lot of different ways to install the barb, but I like using this tool because it makes it really simple. Plug the barb in as much as you can. Secure the hose with the clip. Press it firmly to insert the barb in. If it didn't go all the way in, repeat the step after adjusting the hose. Super clean and easy. This is when I made my first mistake. I'm about to install the brake lever, but I should have installed the shifter first because the replacement shifter does not open up like the brake lever. We're going to skip ahead to installing the shifter and come back to this step after. To install the shifter, we need to remove the grip first. Then insert the shifter through the handlebar. Insert the shift cable into the housing and push it all the way in. You will see the other end of the shift cable popping out at the derailleur. Mount the shift cable to the derailleur. Tighten the screw for the brake lever so it's in place. Don't tighten it all the way because we will adjust it later. Install the grip back in. Now let's go back to the step of attaching the brake hose to the brake lever. Insert the brake cover first, the bolt, and then the olive to the hose. Push the hose into the lever. Hold it in while you tighten the bolt. Once it's somewhat secure, you can let go of the hose and tighten the bolt more. It will not go all the way in, so do not try to. That's about good enough. We're still not done yet. We need to bleed the brake. If you do not have the brake spacer in like I did in the very first step, please skip this step and come back to this step when you have the rear wheel installed. You do not want to squeeze the brake when nothing's there. Since this is a Shimano brake, we can just do a simple bleeding instead of the full bleed. Level the brake lever so it's flat. Unscrew the cover for the brake fluid. This is using 2.5mm hex wrench. There should be an O-ring. It's super small and easy to miss and lose, so make sure to keep it safe with the screw. Get the funnel, plug the hole. Fill in the mineral oil up to about half of the funnel. Screw the funnel into the lever. Unplug the funnel and start squeezing the lever repeatedly. As you can see, bubbles are coming out. Keep on squeezing the lever until there's very little or no bubbles coming out. Once you're happy with it, plug the funnel. Get a workshop towel or something that you can wipe with because when we unscrew the funnel, there will be a little bit of mineral oil coming out. Also, have the screw and the O-ring handy so we can close up the lever as soon as we can. Unscrew the funnel, screw back the cap. I forgot to record this part on the video, but use some rubbing alcohol to clean up any mineral oil left on the lever. We're finally done with the rear brake. It's time to install the front brake. The front brake is super easy to install, so it will be pretty fast. Unscrew the bolt. Press into the pinhole to open up the clamp. The dropper lever isn't mounted to anything because this is I-Spec 2. As usual, screwing back the bolt so I don't lose it. There's a small plastic clip on the fork that is holding onto the brake hose in place. We need to unscrew this completely in order to open it up. Remove both top and bottom bolts. This is a brake adapter. Put it aside for now. You'll notice these two bolts have different length. The longer bolt goes to the top and the shorter is for the bottom. Here I made another mistake. I'm trying to install a new brake lever, but I actually should be shrinking the heat shrink tube. It's easier to use a heat gun on it without the front brake. Let's skip to that real quick. Nothing special about it, just using the heat gun. I have two different adapters for the P&W dropper lever. One on the right is clamping the lever directly onto the handlebar, and the left one is for I-Spec EV. I'll be using the left one. Unscrew the adapter that's currently installed on the dropper lever. Then install the new adapter. This small tab goes into the brake lever. This bolt goes in from the dropper lever. Secure the dropper lever to the brake lever. I just realized I mounted the dropper lever backward, so I'm gonna flip it back. Now mount the brake lever to the handlebar. Put the clip back on the hose and mount it to the fork. Don't tighten it all the way yet. It needs to be a little loose for us to adjust the brake hose position. Install the brake with the adapter. If you're not sure which side of the adapter should be facing up,
The adapter has an arrow to show you. Mount the brake using 2 bolts. Leave it a little loose so we can adjust it later. Pull on the brake hose so that the hose is lined up with the fork. Then tighten this clip all the way to hold the hose in position. And there we have it. Brakes are installed. But we're still not completely done yet. We have some adjustment to make.
Now that we have both brakes installed, let's put the wheels back on. Remove that spacer if you have it in the brake. There are many different methods of adjusting the brake with a rotor, but I always start with this method first. While grabbing on the brake lever, wiggle the brake a little, then tighten it. This works for me most of the time, but I hear it never works for a lot of people. Try spinning the wheel to test it out. It's not making any noise, but I don't think it's spinning freely. Since my first method didn't work, I'm going to adjust it manually. Unscrew the mounting bolts. Look through the brake from the top and adjust the brake so that it has even space between the pads and the rotor. Then tighten the mounting bolts again. It's spinning a lot better this time. Tighten it more to make sure it's on there securely. Follow the same step for the front brake. Tighten the mounting bolts while holding on to the brake lever. Spin the wheel to test it out. This time you can hear that rotor is rubbing against the pads. Unscrew mounting bolts. Again, look through the brake and adjust it so that rotor and the pads are evenly spaced out. Then tighten the bolts. So much better. The next step should be indexing the shifter and the derailleur, but I didn't have the wire cutter at the time of the video, so I skipped this step. As the final step, we need to adjust the cockpit. Get the bike on the ground and get on the bike. Grab the handlebar like you are riding the bike. Find the position that you like, then tighten both levers. Do not over tighten them yet. We will need to use a torque wrench to finish it. I'm setting the torque to 6 Nm. Tighten the bolt until you hear the click. Do the same for the other brake lever. And there we have it. SLX M7120 brakes installed on the 2020 Meta HT AM. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.